Hello everyone, I'm Fangzhou. In today's presentation, we are going to focus the movements in the exchange rates of the two currency pair, which are AUD against USD and GBP against AUD in the next 3 to 6 months. Based on the economic indicator of the respective countries such as relative interest rates, relative inflation rates, commodity price, and exchange rate expectation. Now let's look at what will happen to the exchange rate of the AUD against USD in the next 3 to 6 months. Firstly, we will talk about how does the relative inflation rates affect the exchange rate. Let's look at the table. These data are provided by the Reserve Bank of Australia and the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. It shows the year-ending consumer price inflation in Australia and the US during the April 2017 to March 2018. In order to compare inflation rate easily, we make a line chart based on this data. The blue line represents the Australia inflation rate and shows the downward trend. The red line represents the US inflation rate, which shows the upward trend. After the second quarter in 2017, the inflation rate in United States became higher than that in Australia. Because Australia has a lower inflation rate than the US, the Australia goods and services would be at a lower price. Therefore, the demand for Australia exports will increase, which increases the demand for AUD. Demand curve shifts to the right. Also for domestic people and firms, it might be more expensive to import goods and services from US. Australia imports will decline, which decreases the supply of AUD. Supply curve shifts to the left. As a result, the exchange rate increases. The AUD would be expected to appreciate against the USD.
Secondly, we will talk about the relative interest rate. According to the Reserve Bank of Australia and Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, we collected the data of cash rate and federal fund. We also calculate real interest rate by using nominal interest minus inflation rate. From top to bottom, this four line represents Australia cash rate, US federal fund rate, Australia real interest rate, and US real interest rate respectively. As we can see, during the April 2017 to March 2018, Australia cash rate and real interest rate are both higher than US federal fund rate and real interest rate. Therefore, the higher interest rate in Australia will encourage the US investor invest in Australia and encourage capital inflow. This will lead to demand for AUD increase. Demand curve shift to the right. For Australian, people are more likely to invest in domestic rather than invest in the US. It discourages capital outflow and decreasing supply of AUD. Supply curve shifts to the left. As the result, the exchange rate increase. The AUD will be expected to appreciate against the USD.
Next factor may affect the exchange rate is the commodity price in Australia. According to Reserve Bank of Australia, the table shows the index of commodity price for all items in Australian dollar in the past 12 months. The line chart is more directly describe this data. In general, the index of commodity price shows upward trend. Based on commodity price are widely constant. An increase in commodity price in Australia will increase the value of Australian exports, which means the rest of the world have to pay more for the commodity. So the exchange rate is expected to go up. The Australian dollar would be expected to appreciate against the US dollar.
Now, let's look at what will happen to the exchange rate of GBP against AUD in the next 3 to 6 months. Firstly, we will talk about the relative inflation rates. Let's look at the table. These data are provided by the Office for National Statistics and the Reserve Bank of Australia. It shows the year-ending consumer price inflation in the UK and Australia during the April 2017 to February 2018. Based on this data, we make a line chart. The blue line represents the UK inflation rate and the red line represents the Australia inflation rate. It is obvious that the inflation rate in UK is higher than that in Australia. Because the UK has a higher inflation rate than Australia, the British goods and services would be at the higher price. Therefore, the demand for British exports will decrease, which decreases the demand for GBP. Demand curve shifts to the left. Also, for domestic people and firms, it might be cheaper to import goods and services from Australia. British imports will rise, which increases the supply of GBP. Supply curve shifts to the right. As a result, the exchange rate falls. The GBP would be expected to depreciate against the AUD.
Secondly, we will talk about the relative interest rate. According to the Bank of England and the Reserve Bank of Australia, we collected the data of bank rate and cash rate. We also calculate real interest rate by using nominal interest minus inflation rate. From top to bottom, these four lines represent Australia cash rate, British bank rate, Australia real interest rate, and British real interest rate respectively. As we can see, during the April 2017 to March 2018, British bank rate is lower than Australia cash rate. British real interest rate is lower than the Australia real interest rate as well. Therefore, the lower interest rate in the UK will discourage the Australia investor invest in the UK and discourage capital inflow. This will lead to demand for pounds decrease. Demand curve shift to the left. For British, people are less likely to invest in domestic. It encourages capital outflow and increasing supply of the pounds. Supply curve shift to the right. As the result, the exchange rate decrease. The pounds will be expected to depreciate against the AUD.
According to trading economics, the pound is expected to depreciate against the Australian dollar. Therefore, speculators will sell the pounds, which cause decreasing demand for the pounds. Demand curve shift to the left. Based on the theory of expectation about future exchange rate can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The expectation about pounds is expected to depreciate against the AUD dollar. Australian dollar will lead to the exchange rate decrease. The pound would be expected to depreciate against the Australian dollar. In conclusion, in next 3 to 6 months, Australian dollar would be expected to appreciate against the US dollar. Pounds would be expected to depreciate against the Australian dollar. The following are our reference list. Thank you for your listening.